Welcome to Impact 2022. My name is Nathaniel Watkins. I am the host, and this is our continuing conversation where we talk about just different topics from all over the place, where we talk about current events, where we talk about what's happening in the news, where we talk about race, where we talk about religion, where we talk about basically everything. This is our continuing conversation that we have here so that people can voice their opinions. We can come to some conclusions, and we come to them from a faith-based perspective. Again, my name is Nathaniel, and I am here with you today. As always, I remind you, for those of you who have been here before or this is your first time, type your questions and your comments into the comment section so that we may address them as they pop up. So as we go through the topics, remember that this is a conversation. And so you can participate by putting your comments in there and we can address them. As always, we hop right into our topics. We don't dilly-dally or delay, as people say. So we go right into it. If you've been here the past couple of weeks, you know what we have been talking about. That is the church. And specifically, the relevance of the church. And so we've been talking about whether or not why young people don't come, or the numbers of young people coming has dropped. And we also talk about the relevance of the church overall. And today we have a guest. I think if he's still here, yes, we have a guest. And we're just going to ask a couple of questions and go through and kind of see where we're at. And so I'm going to bring you on in. Jason, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Sounds great. Sounds great. All right. Well, let's hop right into it. So what we've been talking about lately is a question of why young people don't come to church. And so there was a recent study that showed that over 95%, between 90 to 95% of the U.S. population believes in God. However, the number of people who go to church, especially young people, has been drastically dropping. And so one of the questions is, why do you think that is? And so give me your outlook. What do you think? Why do young people, and when I say young people, we're not talking young people like 10 years old, but we're talking about young people like their teens, the 20s, the 30s, those folks. Why has the number of them who participate in church dropped off?
Well, I think it's a number of things, but one of the things that have stand out to me is I think the ideology of when we were kids, it's like you go to church because I said so. You believe in God because I said so. This generation is much more, show me why. I need to see this thing that is tangible. I need to see this thing that's in front of me. And so they want to see the proof that's in the pudding. They're more or less like, okay, this guy God, this guy Jesus, you want me to believe into, but there's nothing here for me. They feel condemned when they come to church. They feel like they're being judged when they come to church. They feel like there's no room for them to grow, or there's no place for them. So they always constantly feel like they're being judged or looked at like some kind of like they have the issue and nobody else has the issue. So I think how to bridge that gap sometimes is some of the people that are in the church, some of the leaders of the church actually go and get some of the youth. Because, back in the day, that was the thing. There was a bus that went around. You can't get a ride? I got you. There's a van that went around and picked up kids. Some of that has been lost. And it's because there's been a disconnect in why should I bridge the gap? They need to just do what I say. That's not how it works. This generation, you can't, they don't live like just do what I say. It's not gonna work. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want their engagement, you have to give them a reason to want to be engaged. That comes with not judging them. Let them come at first how they want to dress. Why? If they're there, then that's the first step. So they're there for a reason. They're there to see what this whole church experience is all about. We mess it up every time when we condemn them from how they look. Mm-hmm. If they don't know better, we have to first establish a relationship. You can't teach me. Somebody can't just come to me and tell me how to live my life who doesn't take the time to know me first.
Right. That's a good point.
The piece that we're missing.
I think, you know what? I think you made a very good point. And one of the things that I talked about earlier or in the previous program was that we don't have people who bring you to church anymore like we used to. Parents are now giving kids a decision. They're like, well, do you want to go to church? If you do, I'll send you, or you can come with me, or you can just stay home and play video games. Whereas, our generation and the generation before, you didn't have a choice. So we already had an established relationship with the church. And so when we became 20, we were able to make an informed decision. Do we want to go or do we not want to go? Now, if you've never been before, you can't make a decision because you don't know. So I think you're hitting it on the head about definitely our responsibility or adults' responsibility that you gotta push a kid to do something. Like you're in the sports field right now. When you have kids, and you can tell me whether or not I'm wrong. Sometimes you got to force them to play some sports, just so they can try it out, and then they can make an informed decision later on about whether or not they like something. But you don't know unless you tried it. And so, and so that's the one of the setups there. But I like what you were talking about with kind of come as you are. But I'll push back. There's some people who say that we need to have rules. When you look at the Muslim faith, and they're very, very strict on their rules, and they keep to their rules, or you look at some other organizations, kids don't have rules, and they actually desire some kind of order and rules in their life. What do you think when people say things like that?
So my response to that would be is this. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be order and structure, but explain to the youth before you condemn them why. Like, why do we have, why do you see sometimes in church where a woman is wearing a dress, they use like a cover up? What is the purpose of this? Like, why is that? It wasn't explained to me until I was older. I never understood it. Right. Like, why does this lady keep putting a napkin on her leg for? I didn't understand it. So, but I think a lot of times they're missing the reasons why. They're missing their reasons why. So I think we have not took the time out to educate them. Some of it is, and I don't say ignorance as if they're dumb, just not knowing.
Right.
So I don't think it's so much that we shouldn't have structure and order, but I think it is to educate the reason for the structure and order. Case in point, in school systems, they tell you don't run in the hallways. Why? You start that at an early age. Well, you don't run because you can get in an accident, you can fall. There's certain rules and regulations of why you don't do this. Church is not built like that, or hasn't been. They just assume everybody's supposed to know.
Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head. A lot of us who are even older don't know.
Yeah.
Like they sit there. Well, why do the deacons wear white gloves? Half of them who are deacons don't have a clue.
Right.
So good point. I'll say this. One of the studies also showed that the number of people who believe in God hasn't really dropped. I mean, you casually see it, but the truth be told, when it comes down to the rubber meets the road, people believe in God, but yet they don't go to church. So is it necessary? There's a lot of young people who don't think it's necessary. Is it as necessary as it used to be for people to go to church, or can they have their faith on their own and be all right?
So that's a tight route. So biblically it says, not forsaking each other, the simile of each other, which is a law. That's before the law. They're telling you that's a commandment almost. Like so I'll say I do think it has a place. I do think it has a purpose, because it's just like when you want to join anything, you want to join like-minded people with the common goal of bringing others in. So I think but to most kids, church is not fun, and I think sometimes we have to meet them where they are. So I do think it has a place, but we have to invite them where they are. So it's not like, if I was a kid nowadays coming into a church, I would be like, it is boring. Like, I don't understand. Like, I listen to the preacher, it's not exciting. I don't feel connected in any way. So I do think, but to answer your question, I do think it has its purpose. I do think that I see the conveniency of why people don't go, because it's like, I can listen online. I can listen to TD Jakes online. I'm good. I got it. I can say, God is a big God. He's everywhere. He is. However, it's not just about this part of this. What they miss is that the service piece. How can you get the information if you're not together? Because, when you hear a sermon, you're just hearing somebody give you a message. Hopefully you take that with you for the week. But when you're assembling with other people and you feel comfortable, then you can have conversations, the dialect. But these are the things that churches need to start back doing. Bringing the youth back in, having youth nights.
Oh, yeah.
I remember going bowling, just stuff like this. It's like the smallest thing that we got away from. But it was fun.
Yeah. No, I think it. Again, you're making a good point right there. That's one of the responsibilities that we have. We got to meet them where they're at. So I'll give you a more practical one. Metaverse. You've heard about it. You know what it is. You know
Okay.
how this is on Roblox and everything, and Facebook is building out the metaverse. Is that a place that we got to go? Do we have to meet them there? What's your opinion on that?
Why not? Well, like why if nowhere else is limited, why is the church?
Mm-hmm.
Like why? Like we have to think where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time where people were talking about like, I don't see it. I don't. We would have never thought that people were just going online to have enjoying joining churches, but the pandemic proved otherwise.
Right.
So you have to adjust with the times.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's just. And I think we have to get out of the thought of, oh, God can only reach in this building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It don't work that way.
Yeah.
It don't work that way. He's so much bigger than that. Let's meet them. If they're in the metaverse, we're going to the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Like what? My question is, people ask the question why, but why not?
Yeah.
What's preventing us from going to the same place that they are?
Right, right. Now you have those traditionalists that say you got to be in the building, you got to do certain things. But there is a battle because I know, for me personally, one of the things that I'm big on is relationships, um,
Right.
and working together. Like church is a relationship. Jesus
Yes.
had a relationship with his disciples, those that he loved. It's hard to love somebody from afar. It's like dating. If you say you got a girlfriend, but you never see her, she's online. You can't touch her. You can't. You know. You talking to her, but you can't see her leg that's tapping because she's mad at you for what you say. But you can't see that because you're not there in person. So your relationship doesn't go but so far. And so there's a
100%.
lot of people who say, look, if y'all ain't here in person, then you're getting 30% of the experience. Um, Even if we go to them and get them on the metaverse, even if we go and you're having church online, even if you're on TV or something like that, at some point, do you have to come in to really get the full relationship, or is it you gonna get the full by being virtual?
I would say you should want to. I would say if done correctly, they would want to. Not everybody's gonna come.
Uh,
It's one of those things. But it's just like, it's funny. It's just like when a restaurant opens that you've been to 1,000 times. Just like a Chick-fil-A that opens up somewhere else that wasn't there before. You've been to 1,000 Chick-fil-A's.
mm-hmm.
There's gonna be a line out the door to go to the Chick-fil-A because it's built in a new area. You've been to the same Chick-fil-A, but there's a reason behind that product. We have to get to the point to where, how do we draw people in, and let the internet's gonna some people just not gonna come. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But to get the masses is what you're looking for. But you have to give them a reason to why is it such a different experience inside this building? Because
Mm-hmm.
I met you, I came to your school, I came to your sportive events. So almost like a favor. You know what? Pastor such and such came to all my sporting events and supported me on Saturdays and Sundays for an hour. I can at least go to his building.
Right.
I can at least do that. But we have to understand that, and you're right, there's a lot of traditionalists, and I think it's just they have to think outside the box. Jesus did that. We
Mm-hmm.
can't. We sometimes we hold Jesus confined for our own personal reasons.
Right.
It
Right.
don't work like that. It don't work like that. Jesus went everywhere.
Right. But you know what? That is the same thing that people use to talk about why they don't need to come to church. They be like, well, Jesus ain't go to church. They be like, the disciples ain't go to church. They'll be like, the Apostle Paul, he built churches, but he won't go into church. And so that'll be they'll say, they'll be like, well, they didn't go to church, so why do I need to go to church?
True. And what I've told people is it's almost kind of a play on words. I'm like, well, prove me wrong. Come to the church first and tell me you don't enjoy yourself. That's all I ask.
Right. Right.
And then when they use those examples, sometimes you gotta let them know. Well, the reason why Jesus didn't go to churches in the traditional sense is because he was the church.
So everywhere he was, like that wouldn't make sense. Like it's almost like, well, Jesus didn't pray to himself, right? But because he was that, he was the deity, he was that. So because he's not physically here yet, and the Holy Ghost is here, I challenge you to come to see if you can still feel that same experience. Prove. That's all I ask. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, that's a great point. We got a comment here. It says, and people showed up to see Jesus. So like you're saying, he was the church, and then people showed up. So you got church. You know, at the end of the day, if you show up, I show up, and we praise God. That's church.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's that's a good point. Let me move it along and hit on some of these other things here. One of the now one of the other things that people have been talking about when it comes to church is that they're talking about the different churches, and they're talking about, you know, the churches that are basically there's churches that are leading you down the wrong path, and then there's churches that are leading you on the right path. And I'll give you an example. I'm trying to be a little bit vague, but let me try to get a little bit more specific.
Okay.
There are some people out here whose church believes in a lot of hate, a lot of racist activities or sexist activities. There's a lot of churches out here who are one topic church. They only believe in one topic. Like, for example, if your church only talks about abortion, but you don't talk about anything else. You don't talk about loving the other people. You don't talk about, you know, your commitment to the word of God. All you talk about is that. And so the confusion is, how do I know where to go? How do I know what the right church is? So I need to just stay away, because there's fake ones over here and there's fake ones over here. And then you got the pastor. So you always hear that excuse where you be like, I can't go to church because I think, how the pastor got that nice car? How he got so much money? You always hear people making these excuses. When we hear those excuses, what do we say? I know what I say. So I'll tell you what I say first, and then I want to jump on what you say. When people give me excuses about, they'll be like, well, I don't have to go to church. I'm going to read the Bible at the house and blah, 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 and do all this, you know. I'm going to do everything they do in church anyway. I'm like, really? Really? When was the last time you read the Bible? Like, when was the last time you really read the Bible? Do you pray every day? All that kind of, I check them on those questions because I don't believe it. I call BS every time.
Right.
But when people are saying stuff like, okay, they talk about the pastor, they're like, oh, it's too much drama in the church. What is your response to them then?
And so I would say, so it's a two-part answer. So to some of those things, especially like with drama, and they identify with the pastor and all these other things, I've always been a fan of, well, do you go to work? Because I'm sure there's a watering hole somewhere at work that, do you shun yourself away from that? In lunch break rooms, do you walk away like, no, I can't hear that gossip. I'm out. I'm not. And then I also say, you know, what do you go to church for? Are you going for the pastor? That's not the purpose. Right. You're misguided already in your reason for going. Like some people like different styles of preachers, and that's fine. But you're going for the experience with the hope to see Jesus or the Spirit of. So you can't. It's almost like, you can't put all your faith into the man. He's going to fail you. I promise you.
Oh yes.
Deacon, we're gonna fail you. Don't do that. I'm glad. Hold up to a higher standard. And I appreciate you, but you can't think that for 1 second that they're God or Christ. So be wary when you go to church with the open mind that I'm here for the experience. I'm here because I don't want to come in. I want to come out different somehow. You have to have that open mind. So I'm always big on, do you watch reality TV? What do you watch on TV? Do you just read books all day? Let me know. Because if that's the case, then I don't know a show on TV yet that doesn't have drama. So you're entertaining into drama somehow. You're picking to choose it. So don't just sing around the church like, oh, it's just so much drama. And to answer your question before, how churches are being set up and leading people down the wrong path, well, they said that was going to happen anyway. It's just like you said earlier, it's a relationship. How do you know the right man or woman? You got to try it out first. It's a feeling you get. They let you down, you leave. Cool. All right. On to the next. Not every church is for everybody. I get it. But if you're thinking there's an oasis place on this earth somewhere, let me know where it is. Because I don't know what. How your own home included. It ain't all. You know what I mean? So drama's everywhere. But what church will do, hopefully, the right church will teach you how to navigate through it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's good. That's good because that's the battle. You hear people talking all the time, and you got to say something back to them. And I like that because that's true. You go to work, don't you? Like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, right.
you don't be like, well, I ain't going to work no more because they messy over there. Like, nah, you going to go get that check. So
Exactly.
you're right. That's good. All right, well, one more question, then I'm gonna let you go. As we've come here time to time, we talk about different things. One of the things it's the church, but we're going to talk less on a spiritual and more on a practical level. I believe that one of the reasons that people don't come to church as much is because the church isn't the power that it used to be. For example, there was a show on PBS where they were talking about the Black church, and they were talking about the Black church and the history of the church. And they were saying that in the early 1900s, the reasons that people would come to church is because, one, it was a community. It was also a safe place. It was where you learned about your finances. It was where all of the people got together who were going to push for social change, civil rights issues such as that. If there was something major that you wanted to do, it was going to come through the church. For example, Black Lives Matter, the movement that went on when people were saying anti-police, and well, not anti-police, but anti-police violence.
Right.
The movement that was going on before that would have started in the church. You would have gone to the church to say, all right, look, the police are getting out of hand in this particular area. We need to address this. Before, you would have went to the church first and said, all right, let's make a movement and call it Black Lives Matter. Now you don't have that as much. You still have it, but the church isn't on the front lines like they were before. So we've lost some of our juice in that way. And so younger people are looking for the juice. And so if I'm looking to do something, I don't necessarily have to go to the church anymore. I can do it outside of the church. Is that again, that's not what the church is doing as far as saving souls, getting people in a relationship with Christ, but it's one of the things that we do as far as loving one another by making sure that everybody, has rights and things like that. Is that important? Is that a reason that we don't have the membership that we used to have? Is because we don't have the same juice, or we don't have the desire to do some of those things that we used to do as far as trying to change our community and things like that?
I do. I agree. And I think what has happened is, and it's not even a church issue per se. I think we've gotten a couple things. I think we've gotten comfortable. We've gotten comfortable with being segregated. So what I mean by that is, I think we've been given enough crumbs to where now we've become individualized. Like, so, that baby boomer generation, as they came through and they got, money, they finally got a piece of the pie, let's just say. So what happens is, now it's like, well, my family over here is good. I don't need this other family over here who's struggling anymore because I'm taking care of mine. So we've been given so long that they gave us a piece of pie and we're like, all right, cool. So now we settled. We're good now. We're not being, we're not slaves anymore. And we're getting some of the same opportunities. And instead of bringing others up, we've just been like, oh, we're good now. But that's been a mentality that's been ingrained in us from a long time ago. And that's why, if you ever noticed, and I'm a big sports guy, so I'll use analogies a lot. If you ever notice, some of the biggest debates in history with us in our community is about who's the GOAT of basketball, who's the GOAT, who's the greatest of all time. The problem with that is, why does there only have to be one? We do it with music. Who's the greatest rapper of all time? Who's the greatest singer of all time? Beyonce, Aretha Franklin, whatever. Rock and roll don't do that. They put their goats all together. So what I mean by that, so why I say that is, and I bring it back home, is we've been segregated and been comfortable in that segregation. So when somebody has something that they want to do, we don't even feel like the rallying. We don't feel like supporting them as much as we should, because we feel like it's not our issue till it affects our house. So then why bring it to the church? The church no longer functions as the centerpiece of a community anymore. Like, I'm not gonna call out a church. I don't know who's on here, but there's certain churches, and me and you spoke before, that I feel like could do a lot more for our local communities that don't.
Mhm.
But you only know about them because you see them. Like, but you don't see them in the community. You see
Right.
them where it's convenient.
Uh-huh.
So I think sometimes as long as a church is prospering financially, they don't see the purpose of doing anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Once one, and because what has happened is we've gotten a little money and we've gotten quiet. They're thinking that everything's all well and good because it's not affecting our household. So kick them a little crumbs and just be quiet. All we gotta do is give them a little something and they'll be quiet.
You're right.
We're seeing now, us being harassed more and it's becoming out more because now people have cameras. But if you notice how desensitized we've become to it, we become used to it. It's like, oh, another shooting of a black man or woman. Oh, all right, that's sad. Next week is over. A couple days is done.
Yeah.
Church is working the same way. They've gotten money now, get better pews and so forth and so on, and we're straight. We're good. We're good. I can't speak for y'all. I don't know what's going on with y'all. That ain't my issue. We're no longer together. We're the most segregated We're the most segregated culture in the world.
You're right.
In the world.
It's funny. It's funny. I'm going a little tangent real quick. It's in all of us. It's in me and in you. It's in all of us. Like every other culture, you see people with multi-family households. They'll live like 2 or 3 families deep. You'll have a family and they can have their kids with them. Us, we have gotten so much in this hole. As soon as you get a little bit, you got to move out. And I get it because personalities clash and things like that. But why is it that every other culture can do that? Hispanics that come to the United States, you see them when they come here, they get together and they make things happen. Asian population, when they get here, they get together and they make things happen. We've been programmed that every time we get our stuff, we have to separate. We have to get apart. We can't even live together anymore. So, man, I think you hit that right on the head. I think you really did.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man, but it's really true how it's designed and set up. And it's our job now. Just I was thinking about this other day. Like, can you name 5 black leaders right now? Like who's in the forefront of all these things, these racial violence and tension and all these other issues? We don't have them.
No,
we don't have them. Or if we do, it's on a smaller scale. You can go ahead.
Yeah.
So it's on a much smaller scale.
You are right. Well, look, our time is gone. Jason, I appreciate you. This has been great. You really have given us some good insight. And thanks for all the comments that came in. We didn't get to all of them tonight, but continue on the conversation on Facebook and YouTube in the comments and everything like that. Again, this is Impact 2022. We will be here again next week, 8 o'clock, same time, same place. Jason, I hope you join us again. This was excellent. And again, thank you.
Hey, I appreciate you, Cuzzo, man. Love y'all.
All right. Love you too, man. All right, everybody, have a good night. And